The Islamic terror group Khorasan has emerged as the latest in a long line of threats to the American homeland. U.S. officials say their goal is striking in the style of the 9/11 attacks from 2001. The administration believed the group posed an imminent threat to Western targets, using that as a legal justification to launch U.S. airstrikes into Syria this week. Here, Attorney General Eric Holder and Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby described the seriousness of the threat posed by the terror group.
This is a group that has been known to us for 2 years. We hit them out of a concern that they were getting close to an execution phase of some of the plans that we have seen them fomenting over the last 2 years.
And we know they were planning attacks against Western targets, either in Europe or in the U.S. homeland. We also know that they were very close to the end game on those planning efforts.
All right, there you go. Show me your muscle, but sometimes only when you feel like it, Bowling.
So what that was, all of a sudden Khorasan, it becomes the imminent threat that was going to happen, that was planned, that was on its way. It was going to be some airline threat, airport threat, because that's their CYA moment. Because if President Obama, which a lot of us would agree he should go in and bomb ISIS and kill those people, but other of us also agree that he should go to Congress, get permission first. But if there's an imminent threat, in law, he can go ahead and bomb. So what he's done is he's put Syria, ISIS in Syria, which he would need congressional approval to declare war on Syria, but then he puts the imminent threat right next to him, bombs them both, and he gets away with it. He's CYA'd himself into bombing it, which, by the way, if you're killing terrorists in this case, I'm kind of okay with it.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, right? He found a hook and a way to do it because they can if they really want to.
And it's very specific of the War Powers Act. You can act when you have an imminent threat. You don't need congressional action. So you're right. Maybe a little bit of CY, but the fact of the matter is it's legal.
Is it legal?
Sure. Under the War Powers Act, sure.
That was a joke.
Oh, okay. So I guess the Constitution is just a dead letter, right? Doesn't mean anything?
Well, I don't know. I'm
just wondering. He's required to go to Congress, Bob.
No,
especially for any
conflict
conflict lasting more than 180 days. He should have gone to Congress on this, and Congress is keeping its mouth shut disgustingly because they want to CYA themselves. They don't want to have to put an aye vote next to bombing when they're going into a midterm election. And you know what I think, too? I think the DOD had plans to bomb, and they saw this imminent threat for a long time. And I think this just fortuitously lined up for President Obama.
This didn't happen overnight.
I think that he gave them the permission, sort of the wink-wink, to go in and take them out like you can do it. But I think he got the last-minute heads up on this. I think the minute DOD thought they could strike, they struck.
Right. Then they said, rack them up, and there you go.
Yep.
Well, I guess Al-Qaeda is not on the run. They're actually just had a wardrobe change. Because isn't this Al-Qaeda? The lesson I'm getting from this is that these guys were going to make bombs out of toothpaste and toiletries, which the lesson here is that they only work on one thing, and that is to destroy us. That is their full-time job. We need to do the same thing. We need to create an industry that creates novel ways to obliterate these people. There should be majors in colleges that are based on terrorizing terror. We have such pointless majors in college. We have gender studies. You're not going to get a job with gender studies except teaching gender studies. Just majors on how to kill terrorism and how to kill terrorists or how to end terrorists would be an interesting possibility.
But you'd have to figure out a way not to call it radical Islam or a war on terror.
Yeah. I think you'd have to. I don't know what you would call it.
I think you have just. I'll come back to this point. It is the most remarkable thing to have Sunnis bombing Sunnis, and he has got to give as much as he possibly can as a carrot. And why take a chance?
Sunni rather than later.
Sunni rather than later.
But it's going to be interesting to see
Shiite
what they
rather
do in England, because Cameron's going to ask for permission to the Parliament to see if they will join us in bombing. And after that French aid worker was beheaded today, it'll be interesting to see how the Parliament comes back to David Cameron about bombing in Syria and in Iraq, because the last time he went to Parliament last year, they rejected him on that. But that was to get involved in the Syrian conflict.
They're very worried about this group because they specifically, they believe, have developed this technology of injectables for explosive in bombs that is very unique and very deadly. So that's why, because ties to the old Al-Qaeda group and the master bomb maker. So that's the connection here, why they probably had to act. But I believe what you're saying, Andrea, is that they had this information, teed it up, and then
Well, don't you think that's why when the White House and certain agency officials were saying there's no imminent threat against against the homeland, why the Department of Defense was freaking out, because they're going, that isn't true.
Find one. Hurry up.
Find
an imminent threat so we can throw
bomb,
that in
and
there.
when President Obama said we don't have a strategy, the DOD is going, we have a strategy. We have all the intel right
But they
there.
usually are. That's the information that we get, that they have, they know where a number of 10 out of 15 of the high value targets are. They're always waiting for POTUS to sign off to go. And when it's time and when he feels comfortable with it.
I was just going to say, I'd forgotten that Cameron got rejected in the Parliament, but somehow they got into it, right?
But that was different. He was asking for permission to get into the Syrian civil war, and he was humiliated. They slapped him down. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this time around.
Producers, do you have a map of the Middle East besides the one that's behind my head right here? If there's another one, throw it up there. If you don't, take a look at this, or go on Google, just take a look at the Middle East. Right now, you have Iraq and Saudi Arabia involved in this. So you have Syria on one side, Iraq and Saudi Arabia. On one side, there's water. Then there's Jordan, who's involved in this, and on the other side there's one blaring, gaping hole that they need to fill, and that President Obama should have spent his whole day getting Turkey on board, because if you get Turkey on board, you have Syria circled, encircled, and they can't do a thing if you're attacking them from all sides.
I would bet you by the middle of next week that'll be the case.
Well, I would hope so, but I'm guessing it's not going to happen.
It's got to be the case now. That's a strategic positioning that they need to acquire. Go ahead.
What was hilarious at the gym, watching CNN, and Carol Costello found it bothersome that no one told anybody that we were bombing Khorasan. And so there were people in the media that would rather risk tipping off the terrorists so that they could have the story. My feeling is if these airstrikes that we did aren't as successful as they should have been, it was because we told them that they were coming. We rang the bell before we dropped the bomb. Apparently CNN thinks that that strategy should have been used for Khorasan. I'm happy with not knowing when until
Just get it
happens.
done.
Just get it done.
Perfect.
Erase them.
Get her done.
Get her done.
Get her done.
Larry the Cable Guy.
When we come back, the latte salute. President.